Hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Dr. George Bernbach, and we are going to be talking about the 5 stories that you need to know in order to connect really strongly with people. And we're going to talk about what they are, and we're going to talk about how to tell them. So, for the next few minutes, you're going to be working with me. My name is Dr. George Bernbach, and I've been teaching all of you for a long, long time now, and I really enjoy it. I like teaching persuasion and leadership. I like teaching how to connect with people. I really enjoy the whole concept of marketing and building big, wonderful, retention filled, referral driven practices. So before we get too far in, let's just go through the rules of the webinar. The rules never change. First, if you have a question, ask the question. Okay, if you have a question, ask the question. Don't wait until the end. I'm going to run out of time before I run out of information. So I'll answer all of your questions as we go. Do me a favor, show me that you know how we're going to interact today by grabbing your question box and just typing anything you'd like in there. Say hello, say good day, bang your hands up and down on the keyboard like a monkey. It'll all work out just fine. But I need to know that you know how to talk to me. Hello, Emily. Hello, Danielle. Hello, Karen. Hello, everybody. Wow, it's so many people on the call today. This is wonderful. So when I ask you a question, I'll usually throw a slide like this right up on the screen so you know that I'm reaching out to you. And finally, I want you to have fun, laugh through the process. I am absolutely certain that there's valuable information in here if you allow it to be valuable to you. But if you keep trying to find the reason why it won't work, you'll find it. You'll find 10 reasons why it won't work instead of finding the 1 or 2 ways that it will. And that's really exciting. So today we're talking about the stories that you need to know and the stories you need to know how to tell. Because in our world, there are 5 major stories that connect, right? 5 major stories that connect. There's a mistake or a failure story. There's the story about a difficult situation that you survived. There's a story about a disagreement with an opinion leader or a colleague or a coworker. There's a story of when you got a group together and you all worked together in order to make it work. And then there are wonderful testimonials and success stories, which you should have tons and tons of. So we're going to go through all of these. So let's go through them one by one. Here are the 5 stories that are going to help you connect with people at marketing events or anywhere else where you want to be. The first is our mistake or a failure story. This is a chance to show that you recognize imperfections or recognize your own fallibility, that you can take responsibility and be accountable for the things that are going on that didn't always go your way, and that you can also learn from the errors and make changes in order to get the progress back or to get the story back on track. So when telling this kind of story, we don't want to come off as sheepish or overly embarrassed because no one wants to feel bad for you. They want to see how you ran into an error. You maybe made a bad decision, but you were able to learn from the mistake and get the journey back on track because everyone makes mistakes. It's how we handle these that matter. So if we're at an event and we're looking at someone who has headaches, and I say, Emily, I've worked with a lot of people with headaches, and the best thing for you to do is to get to the right starting point. I'd like to have you come into the office, sit down with Dr. Bernbach, tell him your story, and allow him to help you. You should see the results that we see coming through this office, and they're very good. It's the right decision for you. And that person throws the objection of, I've tried that before and it just doesn't work for me. And if I choose to use a story, a mistake or a failure story, I would say, well, Emily, listen, I've heard that before and I've heard it before many times, usually right up until the point where I can show the person how simple this is and how it's a little bit different. I don't want you to make the mistake that I once made, which is assuming that every office was the same treatment and the same office. Because I made that mistake once and it ended up costing me more time, more money, more misery. But once I realized that not every office is the same, I learned that I could get past that mistake just by trying the first exam, the first moment, and making sure that what I thought was going to happen was not what was going to be the new thing that was going to happen. So I don't want you to make the same mistake I made. This is the right decision for you. And that's one way we can use a mistake or a failure story. Let's move into story number 2, the story of a difficult situation. Your difficult situation story usually illustrates how you faced a challenge and prevailed. You faced a challenge and became better because of it. You might want to come up with a few different stories in this vein, dealing with different situations. When you had to drive farther than you thought you had to drive, where you didn't think you could afford something, but because you reprioritized, it worked out. A difficult time of meeting a goal that you set out and maybe how you got knocked off track. Dealing with difficult people or difficult situations is usually something that's quite bonding to people. And while a mistake or a failure can lead to a difficult situation, this is a different type of story, right? A mistake or a failure can lead certainly to a difficult situation, but with this kind of story, we're looking for a challenge that was presented to you rather than one that you created yourself. Okay, that's the difference. The failure story is when you made a mistake and you had to overcome it. A difficult situation would be, Emily, based on these headaches that you're having, I want you to come into the office, talk to the doctor. You should see the results we're getting with headaches. They're really, really special. Doctor, George, I really think that I live too far away. Mary, every now and again, we have to get past a difficult situation. There are a few times where I didn't think I could actually accomplish something I needed to accomplish. One of those times was exactly this. I had to drive against traffic or with traffic, and I thought it would take me a long way. But what I did was I took the time to find out a different route. And what I realized is I could set up the time of the day to work for me instead of against me. And I got past that and I got the result. And I want you to get the result too. Give me a quick yes or a no. Does this make sense to you? Is this valuable information to you? Perfect. Great. That's great. The third type of story is one that we get challenged by, and it's called a third party story. In other words, you talk to someone and they're interested and they sign up at the event. Then they go home and their spouse or their significant other or their partner or their friend over a sandwich talks them out of it. A disagreement with an opinion leader, someone who has influence over them. Okay, we want to talk about that. In this type of story, you should be able to show that you're assertive and you stand up for what you think is right. Because it was the right decision for you, even though it's not the right decision for everybody. And if you were able to sway your friend back to your point of view, all the better. If not, though, this type of story should demonstrate that you know when to set aside your idea and fall in line with someone else's program, or when you are going to stand up for what you believe in because you thought it through. It's very handy to have a story about disagreeing with a colleague or a family member ready to go when you're in marketing, whenever you're trying to be influential or persuasive. So this is when they tell you, well, my medical doctor told me not to see a chiropractor. Well, my husband doesn't like me seeing a chiropractor. Well, my wife said I can't spend the money. There were times where my wife and I disagreed on these things too. And we often disagree until we have a conversation about priorities and what's more important. Is my health being important? Or is, saving some money for a movie more important? And usually, if we can have that conversation, we realize that the priority is always going to be on us. So we can move right past that disagreement and get back on track with enthusiasm. So I've had those disagreements too, but honestly, you have to prioritize yourself, or how do you take care of anyone else? Or if it's a medical doctor, my medical doctor told me not to see a chiropractor. Listen, I understand. We speak to a lot of medical doctors, and we get a lot of great referrals from medical doctors. Most medical doctors who don't think you should see a chiropractor don't understand the problem that you're seeing a chiropractor for, and they don't understand that it's something that they just can't solve with a prescription bottle. So what I usually do when I have a disagreement with my medical doctor is I ask them why. But while I'm asking them why, I'm also getting care. And the reason is when they say, because I don't think it'll work for you, I can say, well, I've been doing this for 2 weeks and it works wonderfully. And then I give them the opportunity to celebrate the result instead of being part of continuing the problem. And I can share that with someone at an event. And it doesn't sound too forward. It sounds quite casual. But it falls in line with this third type of influential story, which is disagreement with an opinion leader. The fourth type of story is a collaboration story, right? The fourth type of story is a collaboration story. This should recount a time where you worked successfully with a group to complete a project or get through a challenge or some other goal. And that could be something like this, where, I'm not so sure if this is the right thing to do for me. And I'd say, look, I understand. When I used to work in a group environment. When I used to work with this group at work, we used to talk about what everyone was going through. And sometimes sharing stories in that group gave us all the information we needed. And what I found was, even though I thought I was the only one going to see a chiropractor because of my headaches, I found 4 other people in my group who had all done the same thing. And all of us were a little bit intimidated about sharing that information. But when we did, there was a good amount of strength to be found. So consider that. Even though you feel like you're the only one suffering with this problem, there's usually a group of people. I know there's a group of you right in our clinic, people with headaches who want to join that group of someone without headaches. You should consider joining that group. It's the right thing to do for you. And then the fifth type of story is a success story. These are your normal testimonial stories. These are the people who were here and are now there. Right? Hopefully you have plenty of material for this one. When choosing a story, though, stay away from anecdotes with easy successes. Sort of like, oh, we had someone who was bleeding from the ears with their headaches, and after one adjustment, they felt so much better. They've never had a headache since. People don't believe those things. You want to always focus on the journey, not a hard-won victory all the time. But remember that a journey with a few challenges is more believable. It's more impressive. And you can usually double up some of these story types. A mistake and a failure story or a difficult situation story can also double as a success story. And I think that you should have success stories that are vetted out a little bit, that are expanded out into a journey for all the major symptoms that you normally see on these massage consent forms. Shoulder pain, poor posture, poor energy, headaches, back pain, leg pain, hands hurting. You should have success stories in your mind of that. And one of the best ways to do that is when you meet with the clinic owner to go over your report card, ask him about success stories that have come from the new patients you're bringing in. Ask the front desk about the latest success stories. Always be building a Rolodex, whether in physical form, like in papers in a binder, or in your brain, of the work that the clinic's doing so that you can share these successes. So we covered the 5 major stories that connect. We covered a mistake and a failure story. We covered how to share a difficult situation that was overcome. We covered how to talk about a disagreement with an opinion leader. We talked about a collaboration with a group, and we talked about sharing success stories. Which one of those would be your favorite to share? Which one of those types of stories? Mistake and failure, difficult situation, disagreement, collaboration, or success story? Which would be your favorite to share? Success stories. Collaboration stories. Congratulations. You are officially the first person to ever choose a collaboration story as their favorite. I love that. Success stories. Absolutely. You know, my favorite story to share is a difficult situation that ends in success, because that's all of what Hollywood is built on. It's where people's brains automatically go when they have objections. And whenever someone throws an objection at you at an event, if you can identify the objection and see it as an obstacle on the path of a journey, you've just detailed out your entire difficult situation story that ends in your success story. So the three keys that you have to remember, and these are three big keys that you have to remember. The first is you have to make sure your stories are true. Don't make them up. Too hard to remember, right? The easiest thing to remember is the truth. So make sure your stories are true. Make sure that they show change or growth. If it's about you, it's something you learned and are now different because of it. If it's an obstacle in a difficult situation, what did you learn about that? Do you have to be afraid of it? Or can you now face it easily? And then keep your stories succinct, shorter, not longer. Keep them tighter. Don't ramble on. Remember that your role is to show that you influence people and situations in a good way. All right? Your goal in speaking is to show how you influence the outcome in a good way. That this story will always have elements of several of these. They may have elements related to a difficult situation and a success story. It may have a mistake followed by the way you learned from it. You know, these stories are also very good for illustrating your leadership skills and powers of persuasion, not just your connection and trustworthiness. But if you put these 5 types of stories and you tell them well, these will put you well ahead of your competition. So practice each of the 5 until you can share them in a conversational and confident tone, and you'll find that you connect much better, get fewer objections, and you end up with much stronger connection and success in your objectives. All right? That's all I got for you. Thanks for joining me. Launch this skill. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.